All right.
All right.
All right. All right. All right.
Matthew McConaughey back in the building.
Yeah. I think we're on.
We're on. Awesome. I'm
We're
really
on.
happy to be here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's been a little while since I've gotten to talk about what I love. So it's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. And welcome everybody to the Bottom Line Live. We have Jean Jacques Widmaier here with us today. We attempted to do this a couple weeks ago. We had technical difficulties, and I had many requests to get him back on. So here we are. We've got people on live. We've got people on Zoom live. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to write them. I know I have questions that people were asking me, so I'm going to ask Jean Jacques that. And let me share this into the group real quick. So yeah, last week we had so many people, or not last week, the week before, we had so many people reach out to me and be like, hey, it cut out. So we must have had so many people watching that's why the internet broke.
Yeah, it's possible, you know.
That's my determination of what occurred.
Yeah, I'm figuring the same thing too. I mean, so many people like have so many questions. They're like, wait, and then the internet broke.
The internet broke, and then we just left it on for a teaser. I think actually last week you were in the middle of telling us about whether or not we're having a recession, and I got people going, wait, what does he think? Are we having? What's happening? So that's probably like my first question, but why don't I let you first like introduce yourself and tell us about you a little bit.
Okay, great. That's a good place to start. First off, I have to do a couple of disclosures. I'm a licensed financial advisor. Primarily at the moment, I manage private portfolios for my clients in the stock market, but I give advice across the board from everything from life insurance to annuities to real estate, trust construction. I mean, I just go kind of across the board. I've always been a big picture person, and I kind of like to stay there. And the only times I also really like the details too. Like I love details a lot. So I'm kind of across the board. First off, foremost, the disclaimers that I have to say, just because I'm a licensed advisor nationwide, is that currently anything that I talk about, this isn't specific advice for you. I'm not telling you to go out and buy something that's usually a one-on-one discussion that you would have with any financial professional or anybody that's on your financial team. You know, you go across the board, you talk to your tax person, you talk to your advisor, you talk to, you know, somebody who's working with you in your business, like Maya. You're going to talk with your people for them to give you exact advice. I'll try and be as detailed as possible, because what I feel like happens a lot of the times out there is that we're watching the news or reading some articles, and people like to give you these teeny tiny like little tidbits to kind of like pull you in or whatnot. And then you just get like another marketing speech and you're like, oh, I really wanted some good information that I could use that could enhance my life, enhance my decision-making capabilities, so that I have the information I need to take care of my family or take care of my business or know what's coming up next. That's what I'm going to try and focus on first and foremost. Maya, whenever I come up with a big financial question or word, is going to stop me and tell me to explain it. So I don't go down this like rambling financial words and start confusing people. That's exactly the opposite of what I want to do.
Yeah.
So
love it.
The second disclaimer is that my advisory services are directly through Cambridge Investment Research and Smart Pro Financial. I just have to give a disclaimer for them, and all advisory services are ran through Cambridge Investment Research. But besides for that, I'm not telling you to buy any specific products or anything like that, although I can get into any details across any product that you want, index funds, from insurance, or why you should buy insurance or life insurance, or what interest rates are going to do, things like that.
Yeah, and so our audience, most of these guys, they have a sacred account already, like a life insurance account with Jerry. This is all a Wealth Dynamics platform. So he had to say his credentials because, you know, he has to, but we're definitely not trying to sell anyone anything. We wanted to talk about the economy, how it affects business owners, all that kind of stuff, which is something that I'm very interested in. So Good. So yeah, so like we were mid-sentence last time about
Yeah.
what is your opinion on the recession? Are we in a recession? And then, what should people be doing about it?
Okay, so like this goes back to, most people know that we go through these like 8 to 10 year cycles, right? Where it's like 8 to 10 years. I mean, I think we're like close to almost like a 12-year cycle right now. We're a little bit beyond that of just economic growth. Do I think that there's a recession coming up? Do I think that we're in a recession right now? For the layman, what I think that we're actually in a recession right now. Okay, but for newscasters and usually professionals, a recession is after we've had a certain amount of decline, then you call it a recession, right? But for normal people, usually we're seeing less spending, things starting to cost more, and I would say that we're definitely in the beginnings of it, as well as there's two what we call macro. So that's like big picture, right? We're looking at huge swaths of things. So macro is like the seasons of the year, right? Like I'm not going to talk to you about the weather tomorrow, but I'll definitely talk to you about like what is the season that we're in. Okay. So the season that we're looking at is, there's been two indicators in the last 6 months that have been correct for like 70 years. And we've had two of them back to back in the last 6 months that say, hey, we're likely going to be in a recession. I mean, this indicator has been right for give or take almost 70 plus years, right? So that indicator has happened. It happened last month. And then it also happened about, I think, 6 months before that. So it was like, boom, back to back.
So
that we had those.
Why is it that we're arguing about whether we're in a recession or not? Not you and I, obviously, but in general, in the US, it doesn't seem to be like an agreed consensus about whether we are or are not in a recession. But a lot of people are saying we are, and then a lot of people say, like, I feel like the government is saying we're not.
This is 100% true, right? So this gets down to a little bit of like the semantics of basically, or like trying to draw the line in between things, where I think for the layman, like for a majority of the population, we're definitely in a recession. What you'll likely see, and I think is one of the most important things for somebody to understand, is that the stock market, it doesn't represent what's happening in the real world anymore. Right? So that's like the first thing. Well, I think that, not I think, but the truth is probably around 2008, 2009, there was a decoupling between the stock market and what's happening in the real world. And that happened because the government started stimulating the economy. Right? So the economy wasn't running anymore.
I like that word, decoupling. It sounds like when celebrities get a divorce. It was a conscious decoupling. So basically, the stock market was decoupled from the economy. So it really is just even more, doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, I'm not going to say it doesn't mean anything anymore, right? Like obviously that it still means something, but what I would say is that it's separated from, kind of being able to look out your window, and what's going on in the world is what's happening in the world of finance. So you could see it as like we had the highest stock market ever in the middle of COVID. Right? Like there's like this huge discrepancy. You're like, how do we have the highest stock market ever while so much of the population is not working, while we have huge supply chain problems, while we're having shortages with energy and food and incredibly high unemployment and people not going to work? And, like, how could we have the highest stock market ever during that period of time? And it's because when the government gets directly involved, or when the Federal Reserve System gets directly involved with the economy, what happens is that the economy, or I would say the stock market, shows that involvement. While when we look out our window and gas prices are like almost $5 a gallon, like it's completely different. So that's one of the first things you probably have to understand that most people haven't really caught on to. And this really started probably back in like 2008, 2009, when the government started printing trillions of dollars and giving those out to banks and businesses, and then not really getting down to, the general public. So I would say that these indicators have come up. The word, you can forget this word, but or you can Google it. It's called an inverted yield curve. That's one of our really fancy words to say that.
Inverted yield curve. Yeah, I'm never going to remember that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's one of our fancy words, right? That you would draw out on a graph, but it basically means that when you're betting on the US economy, you're going to make more money betting on the US economy in the short term than the long term. So what that means is that usually you would buy bonds from the US government or something like that. And then those bonds that you're going to buy on the 2 years, like, here, government, I'm going to give you my money for 2 years, and you give it back to me, right? They're going to give you back more money if you give them money for 2 years versus giving them money back for 20 years.
I feel like that's really sad, because it almost means that we're unsure of the future of the US. Like, we don't have faith. And that is why, I mean, that's why we have inflation, right? That we're losing confidence in the dollar.
I wouldn't say so. The first thing I would say yes to, right? Like, when those things are happening with the government, and the government's going to give you more money if you give them money for a shorter time, right? If you give them money for 2 years versus giving them money for 10 years, like, if you give them money for 2 years, they're going to give you more money than if you gave them money for 10 years, right? I'm just making this as simple as possible.
Yeah.
It definitely means that, like, they believe less in the economy doing well in the future.
That's sad.
It's very sad, right? And so that also is kind of an indicator. It's like, well, I think we're going to have a recession. We're not believing so much in the future of the economy versus the present. It eventually kind of like evens out, and then we have a normalness. Can you hear my dog in the background?
No.
Okay, great. He keeps he's trying to get out. He's like, this is too much financial terminology for me. I need a walk.
Yeah. My dog has learned to be quiet when I'm talking to myself on the computer.
Mine isn't. He's jealous. He's like, why is the computer getting more attention than I am?
Yeah.
So that's first part of it. So this indicator has happened multiple times in the last year, twice actually, to say, hey, we're going to have a recession, and it's been right for the last 70 plus years.
And the indicator is the fact that the short-term versus the long-term investment, that's the indicator?
Yeah, with US government bonds. That is essentially the indicator. If you wanted to Google it, you could find all kinds of videos on YouTube or whatnot, but it's the inverted yield curve.
Cool.
So we've had that multiple times, which gives me the idea that, yeah, we're going to be moving into a recession, and it's not going to be similar to what everybody's used to experiencing. Like, most of what we have experienced before was the stock market crashing with COVID, right? And most people think that was COVID, but it was actually oil prices, believe it or not.
Was that related to COVID or no?
It wasn't related to COVID. It was very related to Russia. This is my opinion, granted. Okay. It was very determined move by Russia. And the only reason why I can say that is because after COVID hit, over the weekend, they decided to drop the price of oil by like 50%, which would drastically hurt the economies surrounding them. And when they did that, if you think about how much of the US economy is based off of oil, all of those companies are now going to take losses. Right. And then a little bit after that, I don't know if anybody was paying attention, but like the price on oil actually went negative. There was like so much oil waiting to come into the United States that people were like saying, we will pay you to take this oil.
Yeah, I remember that. I have some friends that are in oil and gas, and they were not happy.
No, not happy. And that was when Russia cut the price of oil. So then all of these US companies, and we were a huge exporter of oil at the time, all had to take losses. And so because of that, people sold out of their oil holdings. They were like, no way, all these companies aren't going to do well. So that depressed the market. And then everybody freaked out because the news was saying COVID, right? And so it was kind of like a little bit of a misdirection. Most people missed it, but it was really from similar energy problems that we're having to today. So that was more of a situation that occurred where we had pandemic and COVID, and we had this inverted yield curve happening all at the same time. So people kind of freaked out. And then, so if we're talking about what we're going to see next, it's much closer to what we had in like 2001 or in the 1980s. So the last things, hey, Megan, the last things that we saw were 2001 and then 2008. So it's been, I don't know, like if we're looking at like 2001, it's been like 21 years since we've seen even close to an economic condition that we're having right now. So I just don't think people are really prepared for it.
So what is it that we should be preparing for? Like, obviously I've been seeing interest rates are climbing. So
Yeah,
there's less people buying real estate. It's, you know, I've been seeing that. Inflation is high. I've been seeing that. Everyone's raising prices. You know, my rent
as
just
they
went
should.
up, everything.
Yeah.
But what is it, like, what should we, you know, our audience is all, you know, mostly business owners. My audience is business owners. I do bookkeeping for business owners. So what should they be expecting? What should they be preparing for?
Well, if you're going to look at it, you should prepare and should be looking at a much longer drawn out slowdown in the economy. What recently the Federal Reserve chairman of the board, I'm not going to try and get too specific here, but recently they reduced all the numbers on how much growth that the United States would encounter. And they're continuing to raise interest rates. So they raised interest rates this month, and they're looking at raising interest rates once again in November, another 75 basis points, right?
Wow.
And then once again, probably in December or January, another 50 basis points. So they've literally, if you read the writing on the wall, they've literally said, we're no longer going for a soft landing. Like before they were talking about, oh, we're going to go for a soft landing. No, they're not looking at a soft landing anymore.
What's a soft landing in terms of the economy? I don't really know what that means.
Okay, so in the terms of the economy, this is just my interpretation of it, okay? Breaking it down a little bit more layman, so we're not like using all these crazy financial terms. A soft landing is when the economy slows down, stocks lose price, lose value, real estate loses price, loses value. Most things lose value because the Federal Reserve is literally trying to reduce prices. So it's hard to hold on to any asset that doesn't have some type of like guaranteed undervalue, which is a lot like an annuity or life insurance or any of those things. Those are going to have some type of guaranteed value that's not associated with the stock market, or it's going to have some type of value that's held in place that's not associated with real estate. Actually, when you have the government trying to do a deflation, so they're trying to lower the prices, they're trying to make the dollar stronger.
That's what they're trying to do right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so when they're going into deflation, they're trying to lower the prices of everything. So things that were $100, they're trying to get them back down to $90 where they should be. So when the government's enacting things and saying out broadly, hey, everything is too expensive, we need to drop prices. That's what they're doing right now. So if you're in stocks, you're going to lose. If you're in bonds, you're kind of going to lose. If you're in real estate, you're kind of going to lose because the government is literally trying to drop prices everywhere they can.
But does that mean, sorry, I know I'm kind of like not even getting my first question answered, but does that mean that we're going to see prices go down at like grocery stores or just real estate? Like, what does that translate to? Because I've never seen stuff get actually cheaper.
Right. I mean, to try and answer that question and then the first question, repeat it to me so I don't like double talk too much. Prices will eventually go down on certain assets that have increased in value tremendously over time. So in real estate, a lot of places have seen increases of 40%, right? Cars have seen increases in prices drastically. Those prices are definitely going to go down. When it comes to like consumer staples, we're likely going to see prices go up before they drop back down. So similar to gas, we had prices go up and then they started to come back down. So what we're going to see in food is likely the same thing. Prices are going to go up further than they are right now, and then they're likely to come back down as the supply chain starts to fix itself. Our supply chain of how we move things around the United States is still not working the way it should be.
But like, I guess I've just never seen that happen. Like, you know, you go to your restaurant and you're like, oh, it was $25, now it's $30. I've never seen it go back down to $25.
Right. Well, what eventually happens is that the prices start going down for the base goods, right? Your cost of goods, those prices actually start going down. And then somebody starts to try and get competitive. And they're like, you know what? That guy next door is selling a burger for $19.95. I want to try and take some of his clients and I'm going to lower my burger to $18, right? So that happens a lot when it comes to consumer staples, as well as energy and other things like that. When it comes to real estate, it's a little bit different, but we're going to see a lot of mix up in that industry anyways, specifically in like large urban centers. So mix up's already starting to happen.
Interesting. What about like for in construction or even in services? Like I have a lot of companies that are selling services, doctors, lawyers, marketing companies, like then everyone's been raising prices. Is it going to be, I mean, obviously, yeah, if you're trying to stick with the competition, I guess, then you might lower prices. But I feel like I don't foresee prices coming down on any of those things.
This is, I know I'm going to go, I learned a new word today. It was tangential, or I'm trying to use it, but I like to go kind of, tangential. Like I'm going to try and like, a little bit. So, I'm not sure how much is going to happen between prices going down and business models actually changing. Right? Like if you see how well business models that charge a monthly fee have changed the environment.
Yeah.
Or we see how much people are trying to say, sign on with me for a year. Or if we look at how business models are literally changing things so that we can control our income in a much more sustainable manner for ourselves. I see more of that happening and more innovation happening. Because that's what tends to happen during a recession, right? It's the people who innovate, and it's the people who are agile, and it's the people who can think readily on their feet and use the resources that they have better than the people who are stuck trying to play a game that used to work when things were really good like 3 years ago.
Right.
There's a word that I use, and it's like they go on tilt, and it's a poker term. And it means that they keep doubling down on a strategy that's no longer working.
It doesn't work anymore.
Right. They're like, the strategy used to work before, right? It's like, we used to just market, or we just put somebody outside that's going to spin the sign.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, yo, that doesn't work so much anymore. You know, when things are good, like, that works, but maybe not.
Right. And like during COVID, that wouldn't have worked at all because nobody was outside.
That's
so if
right.
you wanted to sell something, you had to sell it on the internet. You had to make it something that people needed while they were, you know, staying home.
Yeah.
Something that companies needed in order to keep their business going.
Yeah, I would have sold like face mask slingshot kits. Like, take your face mask, sheets. You know, like that would have helped maybe. But
I sold a lot of remote bookkeeping. It was like, don't you want to know what your numbers are? And people were like, yes.
Yes, we do.
Sold a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, which is super important. So one of the mainstays of what happens in these boom and bust cycles, these like in economy going up and then the economy going down, is the people that can efficiently use their resources. They're the individuals who can think of new ways to put things together. It's the people that are looking into the future of like, okay, I've got a ton of technology. How do I use it correctly? How do I become more efficient? Because the marketplace itself is getting more efficient.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's true. I agree. Yeah. And you even see it in the hiring market, like what employees are looking for. they're looking for remote, they're looking for flexible, they're looking for work-life balance. That wasn't as much the case even a few years ago. And then there was a point where I noticed nobody even wanted a job for a minute there. And now people are like, I want a job, but I want a good job. Like where the companies that are having a harder time are like service industry, like as far as like restaurants, hotels, travel industry, they're having a hard time getting enough people. Whereas like, there's a lot of people that want a remote bookkeeping position, for instance. We have an ad up, we got 300 applications over the weekend.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but like, you see your restaurants have like signs for, I mean, it seems like it's starting to get better, but it's been rough, I think, for some industries.
Yeah, I think it's the people who are not delivering a service or a product that exceeds expectations for the amount that people are forced to pay are going to be the ones that suffer the most, right? Like we go back to the $19 hamburger, which like I'll gladly pay if it's delicious.
Right.
I love hamburgers. But if I go to a place that's competing for that same product, that same service, and the place isn't necessarily as clean, the staff isn't necessarily as nice, they don't like as do good of a job, like those places that aren't really caring about what they do, how they serve, and aren't figuring out a better way, those are the places that are going to hurt the most.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a
really good point. Yeah. Like you really, as a business owner, you can make more money by being able to solve problems better. So it's not that you couldn't solve a problem, but can you solve it better, faster, nicer, cleaner than somebody else? Give them better service, then you're more likely to have your clients.
Right.
Customers. Okay, good. And then back to my original question before we
first question. Right.
Yeah. So it's what should business owners expect and what should they be doing right now? So I mean, you kind of answered it, like business owners need to figure out how to do better, be more efficient, find the business models that work, how can you get remote? Obviously, if you're a restaurant, you can't, but are you on, DoorDash? Do you have good delivery? Like all that stuff.
I think, first of all, having more, better, friendlier communication.
I love that, 100%.
Right? Like having more of it, making sure it's better, and making sure it's friendlier. Yeah. Because your whole business environment, everything that's surrounding you is stressed.
Yeah.
They're all stressed out. They're stressed out just like you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh my God, I'm pinching pennies. Like they're just as stressed as you. And so having just more, better, nicer communication with people, I think that's always going to make you stand out more. When you look at companies that survive and do well in recessions, they're the ones that are focused on building customer loyalty, right? Yeah. Like companies like Harley Davidson or Costco, or those companies, like when you say it, you're like, oh, it's a nice place. Like people that who are diehard Costco, you know exactly who they are. They're not going to stop going to Costco. You know what I mean? Like it's because they focus specifically on building customer loyalty. So
it's because of the hot dogs. Let's be real.
Let's be real. I mean, I've definitely had multiple ones of those, like sitting in a soup, like just eating hot dogs.
Like, why do people go to IKEA? It's definitely for the meatballs. I mean,
yeah. Seriously, who wants to put together their own furniture one?
No one.
So there's that. And then,
so friendlier service, better service, realizing everyone's stressed out. So like, what can you do to make their day better?
Yeah, and that's going to make you stand out in like every case, right? Like when everybody's complaining, they're going to be like, well, can't really complain about these people. That's it. You know what I mean? That's going to make you stand out. Usually if you're just thinking about your customer and knowing that they're stressed out, knowing they're probably having a bad day, they're in the same recession you are, you know what I mean? Like more, better communication. Yeah. Being nicer. No, I think that's probably number one.
100% agree. I mean, I always feel that way in my industry anyways, because I'm doing bookkeeping and I know it's a stressful subject. My whole mission statement is, complete and perfect financial records for the business owner's peace of mind. So that is what we're selling all day long and what we're doing. So I 100% agree because they're stressed out. They just got their tax bill. Their CPA said this is wrong. Their CPA said they have to do this or they have to pay this. It's stressful. You get, you know, and at least there's someone that can go to that will be like, don't worry, we'll help you figure this out.
Yeah. And then, and in doing so, in communicating with your clients and communicating with people that are not your clients and communicating with your prospects and just being really nice and honest and genuine with them, they're going to start telling you what they need.
Yeah.
And that's where you can be more agile. That's where you can come up with maybe better services. That's where you can just throw out the idea, be like, hey, look, like, thank you so much for telling me this. You know, things are always tough and things are always hard right now, or I'm having a tough time. Like, I know a lot of people are having a tough time. Like, what can I do to improve? What type of systems would you like to see that might, you know, make me a better pick, right?
Yeah.
That as long as you have that communication, you probably get a little bit better off.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. What people should expect is that this is going to be drawn out. This is likely going to continue to get an economic slowdown, I would say, until about like middle of next year. If you read IMF blogs, which I do because I think they're fun.
What is it? Oh, the International Money?
International Monetary Fund. They're the ones that lend out money to countries when those countries like need help. So a lot of third world countries who are trying to get into the marketplace go through the IMF to get loans so that they can build infrastructure so that they can deliver beautiful products to the first world. So what they talk about supply chain issues, what it's taking to get those products built and over into the US. What we're seeing also is that the United States has realized that we've got to build our own stuff, because during COVID, there was a lot of countries that shut down. Those countries shut down and we couldn't get the supplies that we needed to build technology, build cars, build TVs, computers, all those other things. So we're trying to like bring that stuff and start building it here in the US too, which is going to take a little bit of time.
But it's going to be awesome. I'm excited about that. I
really like it too. I think it's gonna be super cool. So we'll likely see a continued slowdown. Interest rates are gonna keep going up. I don't think we're gonna see these 0% interest rates again for a while.
Like years?
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think we're gonna see it for a while.
Okay. Yeah. Legit. So when I'm ready to buy a house in a few years, we'll be back at 0%.
No.
No?
No, it's not.
Like 5 years, 10 years?
I don't think we're going to be seeing these 0% interest rates for quite some time. It's going to be a little while.
Well,
I can tell you why that is, like on the next call. Because when you look at the history of how economies work, there's been breakdowns by some of like the largest hedge funds. One of them is Bridgewater and Associates. They've looked at how economies function over the last 2,000 years, going all the way back to the Dutch economy. You see these larger cycles of the economy take place that are about 100 to 110 years. And most of the time, we haven't been able to really realize these cycles because usually the people that tell us about these cycles are our great-grandparents. So our great-grandparents could tell us about the things that we're probably going to experience in the future. But when we talk to them, they have a completely different outlook on it. But if we look at the way our great-grandparents manage their money, that's probably the way our kids should end up managing their money. It looks really, really, really different, but you have these huge cycles that are about 100 to 120 years, and then like 8 to 10 year cycles within it. So it kind of looks like this curve that goes up and then it goes down. And we have these longer waves that take about 100, 120 years. So when you go back to like the 1930s, interest rates were really, really, really low before the Great Depression and around that era, not before, but right around that era, interest rates were really, really low. And then when you go up to like Ronald Reagan, interest rates were like, you could get 17% in a savings account. Like you would buy US bonds and they would pay you 12% every year for 20 years. That's why all of our parents' were like, just put the money in the bank. Just put it in a savings account. I have all my money in a savings account. I make so much money in a savings account. And now we're
like, it costs us money. But the inflation to what we make, like we're like, no, invest.
Reverse leverage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think you said you had to go, and technically we're at the end of our time, but this has been very fascinating for me. Was there anything you wanted to wrap up before we end?
No, I hopefully this information helps everybody, and I've been able to help you make a little bit of sense and not make things more complicated, but less complicated. That's what I really hope to be able to do for you all. Once
I'm
again,
just
any of the
bummed
advice that I
I'm not gonna
gave
get
you,
to 0% in a
yeah,
few.
it's not going to happen. Price is probably going to go down a little bit to like make up for it, but I doubt it. You will be able to make a lot more money in a savings account though. So who knows?
Yay. It's still gonna be less than inflation for a long time though, so.
I don't think so. I think
Make-
inflation will likely cut off by middle of next year. It'll probably be back to normal. Depends on how soft or hard that landing is, right?
Okay.
Okay. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. If anybody has any questions for Jean Jacques or me, you can comment on my Facebook. You can email me, maya@solvencynow.com, or Jean Jacques, what's your email?
It's going to be JJ, just 2 J's, at smartprousa.com.
Perfect. Okay, good. And then next week we'll be back to talking about taxes and bookkeeping, but I thought this was really interesting and we got a lot of requests for it. So we did it. And
thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jean Jacques, for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great afternoon. All right, great evening.
Bye-bye.